Good afternoon, dear friends, ambassadors, distinguished colleagues, and panelists. It is a pleasure to be here with you to celebrate together the International Mountain Day at the United Nations. I thank you all for being here. I would also like to especially thank FAO, the Mountain Partnership, and the Swiss government for organizing this event together with us. We have here today a wide range of panelists that will allow us to have a rich discussion on this issue. As you know, this year's International Mountain Day theme is mountain farming. According to FAO, family farms employ 2.6 billion people, or 30% of the world's population, and are especially important in developing countries. Family farms contribute substantially to reducing poverty, feeding families and communities, and ensuring the sustainability of natural resources. Studies have shown that mountain areas with their dispersed patches of usable land at different altitudes, with different climates, and with their often highly fragmented landscapes, are most efficiently and effectively managed by family farms. Also, family farms help shape mountain landscapes and are custodians of place identity, spiritual and cultural values, and of site-specific knowledge. Argentina is a good example of this. As you know, the Andes are the backbone of Argentina. The Andean territory in Argentina covers an area of more than 500,000 square kilometers and has a population of over 1.5 million people. It covers a number of key ecoregions, such as the deserts of the highlands, the Yungas, and the Patagonian forests, among others. Ultimately, the entire mountain range stands as articulator of rich and diverse territories from north to south. Family farming in Argentina encompasses approximately 20% of the total production value and employs more than 50% of the agricultural workforce. Family farming is the main farming system in the Andes and has protected the mountain environments for centuries, ensuring that our rich biodiversity is not lost and contributing to the food security of mountain and lowland communities. Being so critically important for so many people, we cannot overemphasize the relevance of celebrating the International Mountain Day and of focusing on family farming. Indeed, it is an honor for me to be sharing this meeting to reflect on how mountains and mountain family farming can contribute to the future sustainable development agenda. Now, I would like to introduce Ambassador Pio Venubst, Assistant Director General of the Swiss Agency for Development and Cooperation. Ambassador Venubst holds a doctorate in agricultural science, has worked for the Swiss missions to the Rome-based agencies, FAO, WFP, and AFID, and to the United Nations in New York, and has worked abroad for the Food and Agriculture Organization and the Swiss Agency for Development and Cooperation, or SDC, where he currently serves as Assistant Director General. Ambassador Venus, you have the floor.
Thank you, Ambassador Percival. Thanks a lot. Um, Thank you for being here during lunch time, because this is being a very, very busy time for a lot of us, and I know how in this time, I mean this time of the session, how time is really a valuable good. So I try not to be too long. But it's true that for me it's very difficult to try to be very short and in 2 sentences explain why for us the Swiss mountains are so important. And I will try anyway to give just a flavor. Mountains are there for us both as a reminder and also as a guiding. It's equivalent for many of the stars. Our stars are the mountains. Maybe also because we cannot see much further than the mountain itself. But as a reminder is, people don't know that I'm coming from the southern part of Switzerland, an area that was among the poorest in Europe just 100 years ago. The mountain economy has been for centuries an economy that was basically, I will not say subsistence based, but was a tough economy, was with a lot of important rules, because you had to manage properly a very, very difficult environment in a situation where demographic growth was already there. So actually, if you look at the farming system in Switzerland, we were in a latent crisis already from the 16th century onwards. And if you take some pictures about some of the mountain farming areas of my region at the end of the 1800s, you would barely recognize what is now today the mountains in terms of a touristic attraction. There were no trees, there was over-exploitation, and people had to migrate at least seasonally to make their living during winter, because it was not enough for everybody. So we were from my place, we were going to the city like Milan and so on. The young people would go and migrate for season. Maybe some of you, for this is something that speaks to some of you. And then in around 150 or something like this, a major big crisis really demolished basically the mountain farming system, because the overexploitation reached so impressive levels that we basically in 30 years half of the population from the mountain area in Switzerland migrated where? To Argentina.
Welcome.
Thank you. So to Uruguay. Uruguay is South Africa, California, Australia, and so on. In just 30 years after the population migrated for good. There was also another kind of migration which was very important in the economy, in the mountain economy, was the transhumance system. Maybe some of you know this, that in order to make the best use of what mountain could offer us, we would basically move with our cattle according a very defined, planned time in the years. We would move from one ecological step to the other with our cows or goats. If the mountains were very steep, would be not cows but goats. And then for staying in the high altitude during the summer, and then slowly come back again. So we were making the all possible use of what the mountain could offer. We were cutting grass, which is called forest grass, to feed our cattle during winter. Why? And all was very much regulated. The land tenure mechanism that we had at that time was partially based on where we had the most fertile areas were on private basis land, but most of the mountain area is collective, and still today it is collective management. The land tenure is a collective one in the mountain area of Switzerland. Not many people know yet this, but still this is this. And it had very strict rules. You have the right to bring with your family, you are a member of this community, you have the right to bring one goat, I don't know, one horse. No, horse was already a lot. Well, let's say one cow, 2 goats, 1 pig. But then you have to work for the community 2-3 days during the year. You have to serve the community. These rules are still there. And people are still serving the communities. They are still doing this. So I'm trying to bring with here basically is that the mountain economy and the mountain agriculture, of course, is based on family farming. Could have not been anything else. You could have not come into, I don't know, commercial farming in a transhumant system that is, because the best possible use of the land, the forest, and what the mountain was offering could be done only from a family basis. So therefore, for us, the date of the mountain and the year of family farming, of course, they go together, and for us they are so important. This means also that you cannot look at the mountain economy in a sectoral manner. Of course you cannot. You have to be systemic, because of course the mountains, and this is again when I'm coming back from the beginning, when I say mountains are there as a reminder, the reminder of our poverty time, but also a reminder that nature has rules that you cannot overrule. And if you try to do it, the reaction is big, is strong. Now we know we are managing the water management. It became in Switzerland a disaster risk management, basically, more than ever. We are facing glaciers that are retreating. We are facing unprecedented disaster that we never had. This year we had several houses in southern part of Switzerland flushed away the mountain areas with death tolls and so on. That's something that we as Swiss, we were not used to it anymore. We were maybe used to in 1800, but not now. But it's also a reminder of opportunities. It's also a reminder of our economy. Tourism in Switzerland is basically mountain. It's ecology, biodiversity. Today, after that we reduced the pressure of the human being on the mountain area, biodiversity came back. Quality of air, water improved. And this is for us today, as Swiss, is one of our best assets. And we are learning day and every day from the mountain. We are learning how to go a step further in managing this biodiversity and keeping this. So we Swiss, with the mountain, we have a relation of that brings us to be really humble towards the mountains. We are and we will be always. And this is also something that enters in our DNA, and this kind of being a little bit humble in the way we also engage in the multilateralism activities. This is coming maybe from this kind of reality. We know, people from the mountain, we know that there is no, the winner takes it all. There is no way. In a mountain economy, you have to come to a compromise. You have to find a solution that makes that everybody has a possibility to live. This is our lesson from the past. Why am I spending so much, and then I'm not going to make very much more time, not take much more time, but why I'm insisting on this? Because when we want to include in the SDGs, we want to include the mountains economy and in relation to agriculture, in relation to water management, in relation to any of the goals. For us, it's important that we have a systemic approach, that we look at it as a system, not a separate goal that you can say, okay, in the mountain we have a water goal, and a separate climate change goal, and a separate, I don't know, in a sustainable production or consumption goal, and maybe in the 16 one, a peaceful society in the mountain area, goal 16. all this goes together. And what we would like to preserve, therefore, it's fine not having a standalone goal on mountain. But yes, we want to preserve the mountains economy and what means this in possibly in all the goals, because we think this is very important. It's important not only because we are Swiss, we love the mountains, but because the mountains are teaching something. And then now that we want to go towards SDGs, and we are looking again to this synergetic way of going together, lessons from the post-MDG agenda, let's say, we think that mountains are offering good lesson for all of us. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Ambassador Benobs, for your statement, which called clearly for breaking down silos in our work on mountains. I highlighted the Swiss experience with mountain history, culture, and farming. I would now like to introduce another friend of mountains, Ambassador Luca Mastripieri of the Italian Ministry of Foreign Affairs, who currently serves as its Vice Director General for Development Cooperation. Welcome, benvenuti. Ambassador Mastripieri, it is a pleasure to have you with us today. Take care with my Pope, please, and you have the floor.
Thank you, Ambassador, and thank you, colleagues, for being here. Actually, I'm an Italian who was born by the sea, and as you know, Italy is a peninsula, is in the middle of Mediterranean, but mountains are equally important for us because we have mountains in the north and the borders with Switzerland, but we have mountains wherever in Italy, in the southern regions. That is to say, how much important is the issues of the mountain communities in our country. And so that's why we were so pleased to join the Swiss and other friends in supporting the questions that comes from mountains. And since the first Rio summit, we have witnessed how mountain issues have become an integral part of the international discourse on sustainable development and how their relevance as global issues has increased. Chapter 13 of Agenda 21 recognized the fragility of mountain ecosystems and their vulnerability to climate change that makes them invaluable indicators of the negative impact of climate change. In Johannesburg in 2002, when we launched the Mountain Partnership together with the Swiss government as our partner, these characteristics of mountains were re-emphasized and their ability to support livelihood, to provide up to 60–80% of the world's freshwater resources for domestic, agricultural, and industrial consumption, and the fact that they are the host of almost 1/4 of all terrestrial biodiversity, as well as of unique flora and fauna, was further recognized. In Rio in 2012, the global relevance of mountain well-being was acknowledged. The future we want to recognize that the benefits derived from mountain regions are essential for sustainable development, and that mountain ecosystems play a crucial role in providing water resources as well as other goods and services for the benefit of population that live way beyond the mountain ranges. Now it is well established that mountain ecosystem goods and services span over a vast array of benefits, generating features from mineral, hydric, and genetic resources to food products, tourism and health services, to regulation of natural hazards, carbon storage, and watershed protection. It is therefore benefiting that on the eve of the new post-2015 era, we wish to ensure that the prominence of mountain ecosystems is maintained and strengthened in the international debate that will generate the new pathway towards the achievement of sustainable development. We all know that if we do not pursue robust mitigation measures and reduce emissions, at least to the point that the present climate change conditions become the norm, mountain ecosystems will not continue to be the providers of fresh water to so many people on the planet. We know that we will have to adapt to irreversible and already permanent effects of climate change. In other words, we will have to use all the technological means at our disposal to increase the resilience of mountain regions and nurture the aspiration of mountain people. Mountain people must be provided with the means to maintain their identity, culture, and precious knowledge of mountain ecosystems, and not to abandon the mountain habitats to the destructive grip of neglect and climate change. Non-traditional and eco-sustainable technologies for producing energy, for carrying out agroforestry, construction and transport, for safeguarding biodiversity and water resources, creating employment and providing basic services will have to be made readily available in virtually every corner of the mountain regions. During the rich and multifaceted discussions in the Open Working Group for SDGs, the Mountain Partnership was instrumental in raising the global consciousness on the fact that the international dialogue ought to include mountain ecosystems and their predicament when engaged in issues such as poverty eradication, food security, sustainable agriculture, water and energy access and availability, as well as climate change, disaster risk reduction and biodiversity preservation. The first step in the discussion as to how sustainable development goals ought to shape the post-2015 development agenda is now over, and the mountains have earned some space as part of targets under the headings of water management and protection of ecosystems. Will we have to do better, especially under the social themes, when discussing measures for eradicating poverty and inequalities, providing basic services to all, and devising ways and means to ensure self and other employment to all segments of the population? These are most crucial issues for the well-being of mountains and the maintenance of their capacity to provide the critical and irreplaceable services they now provide to the planet. And Italy is determined to make efforts in this regard. Thank you, Mr. Ambassador.
Tante grazie. Thank you, Ambassador Maestripieri, for your remarks, which have inspired us to think about how mountains link to the future we all want, the present we all need, and the challenges we all see. Also, and substantively in this, our organization, United Nations. Well, I would now like to introduce Ms. Rosa Laura Romeo. And, well, she inspires me every year and every day with this challenge, who has spent more than 15 years. It is an investment. You didn't spend, huh? 15 years working on mountains issues and extensively with countries as a representative of the Mountain Partnership, and who today will provide remarks on the topic of mountain farming and food production. Ms. Romeo, it is a pleasure to have you with us, and you have the floor. All ears.
Thank you, Ambassador. Thank you very much. Well, dear Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, it's a real pleasure to be here in New York once again to celebrate the International Mountain Day with you. As you know, I represent the Mountain Partnership, which, as you've heard, is a United Nations alliance which includes governments, civil society members, private sector, etc. And all these members, more than 200, in fact, 240 as of today, are working together to improve the well-being of mountain people and to protect the mountain environment. So it's a very strong alliance that is working together, and I think this event is a real demonstration of the power behind this alliance. As you know, the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations, UNEP, and the government of Italy and Switzerland founded this partnership back in 2002. And FAO also hosts the Secretariat in Rome. Well, the International Mountain Day, in fact, was yesterday, and we have heard so far of more than 50 events that have taken place to celebrate the day around the world. We had a very big event at the Conference of the Parties in Lima at ministerial level, but we also had many small events in rural villages scattered around the world, and in many different forms. We had concerts, we had runs, we had festivals, we had conferences, books were produced. So all different events to celebrate mountains and to remind all of us the importance of protecting mountains. So as you've heard, this year this International Day is dedicated to mountain farming. For us, this is an important tribute to the International Year of Family Farming, which has really proven the importance of investing in supporting mountain families around the world. And as you know, mountain family farming contributes not only to reducing poverty, feeding families, but also to ensure the sustainability of the mountain environment. But we know that still mountain people are among the world's most poor, vulnerable, and food insecure. We have heard that to cope with the harsh mountain environments, they have been able throughout the centuries to develop systems to cope with this, a very diversified system to cope with this harsh environment. We know that their livelihood is based on several activities. In a mountain family, you find agriculture, animal husbandry, sometimes aquaculture, forestry activities combined with crafts, development, clothing, etc. We also know that several high-value, high-quality mountain products are produced by mountain people around the world. But the value chain for these mountain products is still too long, too long. We know that so many intermediaries are in this process. There are studies that demonstrate that for certain products, only the 7% of the final price of the product stays with the mountain producer. I think this is clearly something that is not acceptable. So as a Mountain Parish Secretariat, and thanks to a contribution from the Italian Cooperation, we are working with our members to develop a global strategy and a mountain label to help mountain producers from mountain communities from all over the world to have a fair price for the products in order to support mountain economies and boost their development. Additionally, we know that mountain people will continue, it's very likely that mountain people will continue to see their living conditions worsen in the coming years. We know that mountains are under threat from the effect of global and climate changes. And we know that this would increase extreme weather events, but will also have a strong impact because of deforestation, desertification, and land use changes, and the introduction also of unsustainable practice in mountain areas. So all these threats are not an issue only for the 14% of the world population living in mountain areas. These are threats for all of us. We are all dependent on mountains, even if we live in the lowland. Between 60 and 80% of the fresh water that we all use in the highland and in the lowland is coming from mountain. And we know that we need this water for drinking, for cooking, for agriculture, for generating hydropower, for industrial use. So as the population continues to grow and glaciers continue to melt, where will the fresh water come from? So we need to take action to address these issues before it's too late. So this is why the Mountain Parish continues its work with you, with the member states, and with the civil society, to ensure the inclusion of mountains in the Sustainable Development Goals and in the development process in general. So we started our work to include mountains in the Post-2015 development agenda back in October 2013, when we organized a mountain focus group meeting at the Italian mission. Then we continue with the celebration of the International Mountain Day, again with Ambassador Percival and the government of Argentina. And then we organized other 8 events during these last 14 months to support the inclusion of mountains, the attention to mountains in this post-2015 process. We need to keep this momentum going. This is very important. So consistent with FAO mandates to pursue a world free from hunger and malnutrition, I believe that today is an opportunity for us to join forces to foster the well-being of mountain communities and their environment, and create a sustained political momentum to ensure that mountains are addressed in a proper way, in an adequate way, in the post-2015 development agenda. This is very crucial. Mountain needs specific policies, investment, and funding to make development a long-term reality. So in closing, I wish to encourage you to speak out in favor of keeping these 3 targets that we have achieved on mountains in the Sustainable Development Goals proposed by the United Nations Open Working Groups, and formulate implementation activities that would assist mountain communities. I think together we can keep mountains high on the world agenda. Together, only together. So thank you. And now I have the pleasure of sharing with you a short video that we have produced in the Mountain Partnership Secretariat. Thank you.
Mountains in India are important not just for goods and services.
Actually, Macedonia is mostly hilly and mountainous region.
Chez nous, en montagne, c'est presque 10% de la population qui habite en montagne.
In our mountains, we are the source of water.
Республика Алтай, она и называется Алтай Золотые горы.
Mountains provide food, shelter, and income to people around the world and are celebrated every year on the 11th of December, International Mountain Day. Members of the Mountain Partnership, a United Nations alliance of governments and civil society organizations, explain what it's all about.
It's a mechanism and it's the event where all people can understand the importance of mountains and celebrate the mountains.
Une journée à valoriser pour plaidoyer pour les régions montagneuses.
It is an opportunity to share with the world the importance of mountains.
Most of our populations are not aware what the mountains mean, what the mountains matter for the future.
So why do mountains deserve a worldwide celebration every year?
We know mountains are very important socio-economic development of all countries in the world.
Donc on doit toujours investir beaucoup plus sur le développement des montagnes.
Mountains are important not just for the people living there, also for the downstream.
Por su valor cultural, por las fuentes de agua y energía. Y en los Andes esto es algo muy importante. Yo soy de Perú y esto es algo muy vital, ¿no?, para nosotros.
Celebrations of International Mountain Day include sporting events, competitions, art exhibits, fairs, concerts, and conferences worldwide. International Mountain Day also brings about governmental action and heightens cooperation.
En mi país, Argentina, ha sido fundamental porque ha sido el punto de partida para la creación del Comité Argentino de Montañas, que está altamente involucrado en las tareas locales e internacionales en materia de montañas.
The International Mountain Day is very, very important for people globally, regionally, nationally, and also locally.
Y las personas deben conocer por qué hay que amar las montañas.
Express your love for mountains this year on International Mountain Day.
Happy International Mountain Day. We
love
mountains.
mountains. We love mountains.
Love mountains. We love mountains.
It's impossible for me not to remember my home, and really I am shocked. Remember my home. Well, really it's difficult to live in the mountains, but we learn how to live with solidarity, patience, and a strong confidence in the future. Well, sorry, I have the text here. Well, now, thank you, Rosa Laura, for your remarks that discuss how we need funding for mountain communities, particularly mountain farmers, and your call for maintaining mountain targets in the Sustainable Development Goals. From your video, we can clearly see why the Mountain Partnership and International Mountain Day are important to countries around the world. I would now like to introduce our next speaker, Professor Rusty Butler of Utah Valley University. Professor Rusty Butler currently serves as Associate Vice President of International Affairs and Diplomacy of Utah Valley University, where he works hard to bring students closer to the work of the United Nations, and we appreciate especially your commitment. And has been named the Honorary Consul General for the Russian Federation in the state of Utah. He has previously held positions in the U.S. government and private sector, and today we'll speak about mountains in the post-2015 agenda. Professor Butler, I'm very happy to see you again, and I give you the floor.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. It's a delight to be here, and it's a delight to meet some of my friends again from Kyrgyzstan and from Greece, from other nations of the world. I had the opportunity of having breakfast with the ambassador of Greece this morning, and we talked about mountains. What else? I'm so delighted for Rosalara for her initiatives in making this all possible. She is marvelous. She's a jewel. They don't pay you enough. I'm going to recommend a raise. Happy International Mountain Day. I know it was yesterday, but we're celebrating it today. It's an honor for me to be part of the 2014 International Mountain Day celebrations here at the UN in this meeting. And I express my thanks to the FAO and the Mountain Partnership and other organizations for their splendid celebration of the mountains, as we do every year at our university. Our university is the largest university in the state of Utah, set right in the mountains, and I have a handout here in case anyone is interested of some of the initiatives that we do, and on the front is a picture of our university with obviously a mountain behind it, a major mountain behind it. We are in the heart of the mountains. During a recent international conference call to discuss a joint mountain-related project in Central Asia, specifically in Kyrgyzstan, one of the callers made an interesting observation. He had done research on climate change issues related to changes in glaciers in a remote part of eastern Nepal, and had done this, had been quite involved in this study over a number of years. But he was last there in that particular valley in the 1990s, and his expectations of change in the area were narrow and to a degree rather preconceived. However, when he returned, he found something that took him aback. Indeed, glacial lakes had appeared as per his expectations, but that is not what surprised him. What he found was an entirely new demographic. The migration patterns were very noticeable, cell phone usage was nearly universal, and had altered the economy. A new resource, a native natural aphrodisiac, was selling for significant amounts of money. And that had altered the economic base, and other direct and non-climate related changes were observable to him. His experience was a striking confirmation to me that the issues of sustainable mountain development and the UN post-2015 agenda cannot be approached in a disjointed fashion. There must be a holistic effort where all the pieces, be they economic, climate, agricultural, education, forest, water, biodiversity, or health-related or any other issues, have to be put on the table and treated as a whole, not in isolation. And the overall approach must also be altered, in my opinion. To date, for the most part, our generation, those of us in this room, have carried the water on mountain issues. We in Utah and surrounding mountain states, including Colorado and Wyoming and other states in the U.S., have deliberately engaged the next generation. In this paper that I have here that you're welcome to take, in this paper, you will see the keen interest and leadership that university students have taken specifically on sustainable mountain development as members of the Mountain Partnership. Not content with higher education efforts alone, they instituted a statewide essay contest and an organization of clubs among high school students, and are now reaching into the elementary schools quite aggressively. Also, mountain proponents must become more proactive and energetic in diplomatic ways to bring the mountain agenda to the attention of not just the UN and other international bodies, but also to community and regional decision makers. We are strong believers in local action as a way to sway leaders at higher levels. I've always used the analogy that the head is very important, but it's the neck that turns the head. And we believe that we are the neck. Our students and faculty, as well as others in the state, have gone to city, county, and state leaders with messages about sustainable development issues. This is also happening in Wyoming and Colorado, where we work with like-minded friends. And I was delighted to see Carino in the wonderful short clip you had there. On July 24th, 1847, nearly 170 years ago, an advanced band of settlers in wagons came through the rugged Rocky Mountains into a high, desolate desert valley where Salt Lake City now stands. This was the first wave of Mormon pioneers who had been expelled from their homes in Illinois and Missouri states. There were no Walmart, Target, or Costco stores. There was nowhere to go shopping, and they had no money anyway. They were self-reliant and had to build an entire civilization from nothing but sheer willpower and survival instincts. Crop, dairy, and livestock production were the first things they worked on simultaneously with dams, reservoirs, and canals to bring water from the mountains for irrigation. They did their work intelligently and in a sustainable manner, planning for their descendants and future generations. As one of those descendants, I grew up on a working farm in the high mountain desert, and I know firsthand the importance of sustainability and growth. Today, Utah is the nation's leading diversified economy, ranked in the top 5, if not number 1, by Forbes magazine in several categories, including best places to do business, entrepreneurism, diversified job creation, and economic opportunity. We now share the secrets of our success as enthusiastic working partners for the rest of the world, and that's what we want to be, partners with you in helping to make mountains a top priority in this agenda. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Professor Butler. Well, every time your enthusiasm is an epitome here. So thank you very much for the leadership of your university. And let me introduce only that when in my former life, when I was senator, I had the opportunity and the responsibility to be co-author of the glaciers law. And really, it was like the Security Council. It was a battle because we have the perspective on glaciers to preserve, protect glaciers, because we drink this water. Mendoza is a province where it's a desert. and we have only 3% of our land able to agriculture. So we drink this water, we use this water for the different activities, for irrigation and so on. So we have many issues that is not the fanatism that not touch the mountains, but we have to, well, to be free and responsible with mountains, with nature. And thank you, Professor Battle. Now I would like to introduce Mr. Jake Norton, owner of Mountain Wear Productions and mountaineer, who will provide remarks on sustaining mountain environments and watersheds. Mr. Norton has extensive mountaineering experience where he has seen the effects of mountain environments and communities firsthand. And this is so important. And has captured his experiences on film and in his photography. Beautiful. He is also founder of Challenge 21, which aims to raise funds for clean water and sanitation in communities around the world. Mr. Norton, you have the floor. Welcome.
Thank you, Ambassador Percival, and thank you everyone else here. It's an honor to be here, and I come from a slightly different perspective. As was just said, my vocation and avocation is climbing. I'm a mountaineer and photographer and filmmaker, all centered around the mountains. And I guess where we all in this room connect is if you're not a climber yourself, there's a very good chance I might have at least climbed in the mountains in your home country, Italy, Switzerland, Argentina, Rwanda, Uganda, India, Nepal, Tibet. I've had a great opportunity to climb in these mountains, as well as witness the changes that are happening geographically, geologically in these mountains, and ethnically with the people, the economies, as Rusty just talked about, the incredible monumental changes over a very short period of time, and the very real, very personal struggles that so many people in these mountain environments are going through on a daily basis. So it's critical, and I salute you all for taking an active role in the Mountain Partnership and making mountains a real point of dialogue as we go forward as a world community. So with that, I've got a few prepared words here that I'll share with you. So. In his book, The Flow of the River, the great writer and philosopher Loren Eiseley wrote, "If there is magic in this world, it is contained in water." And while I would no way have the courage to disagree with someone like Mr. Eiseley, I would personally adapt his words to say, if there is magic in this world, it is contained in mountains. For the past 25 years, my life has been focused on mountains, climbing and guiding them, making photographs and films about them, and advocating for them, their people, and their bounty. As a climber, the might of the mountains have given me a deep respect for their power. As an artist, the sublime beauty of the high peaks has given me deep appreciation for their cultural stature and spiritual importance. As a lover of mountain peoples and mountain environments, a lover of animals and forests, wild places and scenic vistas, flowing rivers and thundering glaciers, as I guess I would argue a human being, I have also developed a monumental respect for how critical the mountains are in supporting all that I love, and also just how fragile these areas are, despite their perceived indestructibility. During my time in the mountains, I've witnessed firsthand how well they provide. Their rich soils create arable land for farming. Their melting snows and flowing rivers irrigate crops far, far downstream. Their deep valleys provide home and shelter for diverse wildlife. Their might and mystery sustain faith for indigenous culture. But I've also seen firsthand the frailty of mountain areas and the devastating consequences their destruction has on all who live in their shadow. In the Ruwenzori Mountains of Uganda, Ptolemy's famed Mountains of the Moon, My Bakonjo friends told me of disappearing glaciers, limited rainfall, and increasingly difficult times. Last year in India, as we followed the Ganges River from source to sea, our cook, Sultanji, showed us the remains of his home and his business. Smashed windows, broken beams, and 6-foot-tall piles of mud were all that remained after the devastating Glof, or glacial lake outburst flood, which was nicknamed the Himalayan tsunami, obliterated his village, killing tens of thousands in the process. My Nepali friend, Subhash Magar, has left his family farm because he can no longer make an adequate living up there, searching for work in the competitive mountain tourism industry and in the crowded streets of Kathmandu, Nepal, while his brothers, also in financial dire straits, have left Nepal completely to work through manpower agencies in the Gulf. And even in my backyard in Colorado and Rusty's backyard in Utah, recent years have seen our mountains alternate between raging and destructive forest fires to catastrophic floods. And our Colorado River kissed the sea for the first time in 2 decades just this year. The mountains are the water towers of our Earth, and thus are a cornerstone of humanity and sustainable human development. For millennia, they have encouraged myth and sustained faith. They provide inspiration and sustenance in equal measure. Mountains flow with water, teem with wildlife, and share their bounty generously. They are, indeed, the magic in this world. It's high time we recognize this with action. So thank you very much, and I want to share with you all now also a very brief clip that reiterates some of the points here, a very brief video, mainly filmed in Kenya, on Mount Kenya in 2012. In 2012, I traveled to East Africa's Mount Kenya to tell the story of one of the world's greatest water towers. Mount Kenya and its surrounding peaks produce some 70% of the country's water, supplying a vital resource to the country's people and its 3 million farming families. But it is changing. The ancient landscape of Mount Kenya has been transformed, its glaciers erased, its storage capacity stunted. And Mount Kenya is not alone. Most of East Africa's glaciers have disappeared, and those few that remain are shrinking quickly. And the same thing is happening worldwide, from India's Gangotri to Glacier National Park's Grinnell, and everywhere in between. It's time for action. Mountains are cornerstones of sustainable human development, providing over 70% of the world's fresh water and sustenance to over 1 billion people. But they are changing. Climate change, unsustainable development, pollution, and population are wreaking havoc in the mountains, and it's being felt by us all. Let's act now and make mountains a part of the post-2015 development agenda. So again, thank you all. Thank you all very much for your efforts on behalf of mountains, and thank you, Rosa Laura and the Mountain Partnership, for allowing me to be here today. So thank you. Grazie.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Norton, for sharing your experience in words. And I don't doubt if I say your project of life. You share with us your project of life, so thank you. And well, congrats for your film on how mountain environments are changing and under many threats. At this time, I would now like to welcome interventions, observations from the floor. I'm sure that, well, the different participants of this meeting would like to speak and, well, make contributions. The floor is open. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ambassador.
Please.
Thank you, Ambassador. My name is Karma, and I'm from Bhutan. I just thought I'll share some perspective from a mountain country from the Himalayas. But let me first thank the Mission of Argentina, FAO, and the Mountain Partnership Secretariat for organizing this important event. As a mountain country, we are happy to participate in this event. I want to also thank all the presenters for their insightful presentation and views, which really helped highlight some of the issues surrounding mountains. And as a mountain country in the Himalayas, some of the issues raised by Ambassador yourself and the presenters resonated well with us. On the broader aspects of the link between sustainable development and mountain, our perspective is that when we talk of sustainable development, we are talking of sustainable development in the mountains. When we talk of poverty eradication, we are talking of poverty eradication for those people living in the mountains. So the point is that there is this intrinsic link between sustainable development and mountains, and that our lives, especially those living in the mountains, revolve around the goods and services that the mountains provide. And I think the point that Ambassador of Argentina really struck a chord when you talked of the role of family farming to improving the food security, and this is something that we really attach great importance, because majority of our people are engaged in farming and live in farming communities, and that these the farming activity that they engage in contributing to improving their livelihoods and living standards. So that point resonated well with us. Mr. Pro also talked of the spiritual the spiritual connection between mountains and people, and I think that is something that we treasure very much. On the contributions of mountain to the 3 dimensions of sustainable development, I just wanted to share that in terms of economic development, for us, mountains have contributed very well. One area is in ecotourism, and in Bhutan, when we talk of ecotourism, it's purely mountains. Because of the beauty of mountains, tourists are normally drawn to visiting Bhutan, and that provides a lot of revenue at the national level for our government. And the other is, of course, using the waters that the mountains provide to tap into hydropower resources. So that point on the contributions of mountain to economic development is I think, a good example. But at the broader level, I think from our experience, what we have done is we have really made great efforts in maintaining a rich forest cover, and that has really that has really led to creating a good carbon sink to combat climate change. But the irony of climate change is that, as some of them have pointed out, is the glacial lake outburst floods. While we have done so much, there is only so much that we can do, but the effect of of climate change is felt by us. And so the issue of global lake outburst floods is something that continues to threaten us. Getting to the last point on the mountains and post-2015 agenda, I think as mountain countries, we welcome the fact that goal 15 and 16 contain targets on mountains. And I think some of the presenters made a very good argument on the need to have a systemic and holistic approach, and not to treat goals and targets in isolation. So I think that point is very well made, and I think in the last OWG sessions, I want to thank the Mountain Partnership Secretariat for reaching out to us. I think they came to us, contacted us with a lot of technical inputs, which we were able to use in our interventions, and I think that was very helpful. So going forward, the question that we had was that as we get into the next round of discussions on post-2015 agenda, what is that we ought to do to ensure that mountains find a place in the post-2015 agenda? And in our view, we felt that perhaps some sort of reference in the declaration would be nice. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Sure, all of us recognize the presence of a very important person in our organization, and his constructive presence here is especially not only because today is the International Day of Mountains, but he supports our everyday commitment. So I would like, if you allow me, to call on Mr. Nicholset, Director of the Sustainable Development Office from the UN Department of Economic and Social Affairs, well, to express his view, positions, comments. Please, good afternoon.
Ambassador Percival, thank you for that introduction. I start with a confession. Like many in this room, I am specially biased to the mountains. I studied in the lower reaches of the Himalayas, and my home is also in the lower reaches of the Himalayas. It's at 8,000 feet above sea level, but in the Himalayan context, that is the lower reaches. So I have this special relationship with the mountains, and my ambition after leaving the UN is to start a family farm and bring quinoa farming to that region. So that will be in some competition with the countries in Latin America, but I'm sure it will do a lot to improve the lives of many of the people in the families in that area. Ambassador, so much has been said. What is really special for me when I go back home at that 8,000 feet above sea level is the cultural and the spirituality dimension of mountains. The taxi driver who takes me up after I've come to the railhead and started moving up in the mountains, he stops every 2 miles to pray in a little temple, which is all along. It takes a long time to get home because of that. But the fact is that there's a certain spiritual connection between the people and the mountains, and the people who live there in the mountains. And anyone who's been and roamed around in the Himalayas, as Jake has, you find that the moment you enter the mountains there. So I just wanted to emphasize that we talk about goals and targets, but there is this special spiritual thing which is very difficult to capture in goals and targets, and there's that cultural and spiritual affinity of people who live in the mountains, which I think is the defining characteristic of the people who live in the mountains. And I just wanted to start by saying that because it's so personally dear to me. We did help in creating this framework of goals and targets, but then I said, look, if we have all these goals and targets, how does this relate to my home? How does it relate to the people I'm most familiar with? And what I would say is this, that each and every one of those goals has a special meaning for people in the mountains. Whether it's poverty, we clearly know that there's a distinction between people and poverty in the mountains and people who are not in the mountains, or the plains people as we call them in India. If you look at the issue of health, and you see the kind of difference there is between the access to health services of people in the mountains and the others in countries, that's very dramatic. If you look at food security and hunger, you find the same disparity between accessing food and providing food security to people in the mountains. If you look at the issue of gender equality and empowerment, you see how much distinction there is. And in fact, I find that in the mountains in India at least, it's much more egalitarian and equal when it comes to the gender issue. In fact, most of the men seem to be goofing off in the mountains and all the women are doing the work. That's what is the tradition, at least in the Indian mountains. Then if you go down the entire list of goals, whether it's water, energy, industrialization, jobs, opportunities, the terrestrial ecosystems, the mountain ecosystems, peaceful societies, access to justice, you find that mountains and the mountain people have certain inbuilt discrimination against them. And the fact that we'll be able to work together in achieving these goals is going to be the challenge of the post-2015 era. And it's a challenge which will apply specifically and most importantly if these goals are implemented in their sincerity, and if it is, covers all parts of countries and with specific reference to people who live in the most isolated and distant parts. Now, this is not only true for big subcontinent like India, but even in the small island developing states I went to, there again you find the connection between the marine ecosystems and the mountain ecosystems and the terrestrial ecosystems. So all that has to be honored and preserved. I must compliment everyone in this room and those, including in the Mountain Partnership, who've managed to keep this issue so high on the agenda. I was there in Rio 22 years ago, and I've seen the evolution of the importance of this issue as we came to Rio +20 and how it's captured now in what are the Sustainable Development Goals and targets. It's been great work, and the fact that there are 3 specific targets on mountains and mountain ecosystems is important. But more than just the number of reference to the mountains, if we look at the goals and targets, not as a list, but as a system of interconnections, as a system which is integrated together to better the life of peoples, we will see how important the achievement of all these goals and targets will be to the people and the lives in our mountain areas. So today, on this special day, as we celebrate the International Day of Mountains, and concurrently we're looking at a process which will finalize the post-2015 development agenda, it's really fortunate that the world is being helped by people like all of you. I mean, all the countries who have spoken, whether it's Italy or Switzerland also I have a special relationship with. I started my diplomatic life in Geneva, and that was like coming home in a sense for me from the Himalayas, because the part I live in, the Prime Minister of India, Jawaharlal Nehru, called it the Switzerland of India. And it's always a pleasure to have started my life there, or Italy, and I see Kyrgyzstan, and of course we have representatives from Colorado and Utah, and so all of us in a sense have this special affinity to the mountains, but I see a fortuitous coming together of this interest in bettering the lives and the people in the mountains, of protecting the mountains from the consistent erosion that's taken place because of the ravages of nature, because of climate change. I see it in my part of the world, how conditions have become so much worse. With the browning of our mountains has taken place. The scarcity of water is everywhere. The erratic nature of the Indian monsoons has hit the mountains too. So when you see all this, it's great that the world is coming together finally. And if we sincerely implement this post-2015 development agenda and especially focus on the targets on the mountains, we'll have done a great service to humanity. So thank you very much, distinguished ambassador, distinguished panelists. It's been a great pleasure for me to be associated with this. Thank you, Ambassador.
Thank you very much, Mr. Seth. As I said, we appreciate especially your presence here and your participation and your daily support. Well, you have to be patient. A few minutes. A few minutes. I use this hammer sometimes. No, the panelists, of course, will have the opportunity to make their comments at the end of the participation of the other colleagues. But please, the floor is yours.
I just want to say that that was probably one of the most profound statements of the day, because as I recall, virtually all of the great prophet leaders of virtually every religion goes up into the high mountains, at the top of the mountains, to receive whatever inspiration they're going to receive. I just read recently of Moses going up into the mountains. And so they are the source of great spirituality. Excellent point.
Thank you very much. And I see you. Please take the floor.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Percival, and let me congratulate the permanent missions of Argentina and Switzerland with your partners for organizing such a wonderful event, as always, talking about mountains is very informative and also very sensible, and I really enjoyed that meeting. I don't want to take your time more, just to point to the fact that it's never too much to celebrate the mountains and also to talk about their importance in the post-2015 development agenda, and this is why the permanent mission of Romania, together with UN Food and Agriculture Liaison Office in New York and the Mountain Partnership Secretariat, are organizing a meeting of the Mountain Focus Group. It's starting from 3 o'clock, so in a couple of minutes, in conference room A. And I would kindly invite you, if you are available, to discuss the current situation regarding the inclusion of mountains in the Sustainable Development Goals, to coordinate the next steps ahead of the post-2015 Development Agenda negotiations, and also to explore the role of the Mountain Focus Group in promoting sustainable mountain development. I thank you very much, and I'm looking forward to see you there.
Thank you very much. Sometimes I perceive like IDP in this organization. We have 5 minutes more, because the next activity is coming. So please, another representative or colleague wish to take the floor? So I think that we can use these final minutes to hear your desires, your comments. If you agree, we begin with you.
This was a general commitment for all of us to continue to strive for having mountains on top of our agendas. And I think we are going through a very tough year in negotiations in various fora, and problems of the mountains are multifaceted and has to be confronted under different perspectives. And so, well, I'm pleased to hear that most of us are willing to do our best to preserve mountain environment and mountain activities.
Thank you very much. Please, Pio.
Thank you. Whether we are going to have the SDGs or not, the reality is already there. So we have been discussing this today. And for us, from the Swiss perspective, what is important is that at the center of our working relation is the exchange of knowledge. That it's something that we are working a lot, both internally. We are working on internally in Switzerland how we would manage our ecosystem the day we don't have any glaciers left. We are already modeling this, the 20 years, what kind of investment are needed and so on. We are working on this. And what we are doing, we are sharing experiences, our own experience also, both from the past and from the future, with colleagues in Peru, Bolivia, Central Asia, China, and so on, because this is not only about mountain water, but it's also about underground water, where we produce our agriculture also in most of the, let's say, the plains, and food security might be coming back exactly as in 2008, a big issue in the future. So we therefore sharing our experiences.
Thank you very much. Please, Jake.
Very quickly, I would just echo everything that's been said about the interconnectivity, that I think mountains are often viewed as these distant lands that you travel to and then depart from, and yet we're all a part of the mountains, whether we live in them or not. I saw this firsthand in Kenya. The glaciers dry up. The people hundreds of miles away in Samburu now either have devastating drought or ravaging floods. They have no no normalcy anymore, even though they can't even see Mount Kenya from there. In India, down at the Bay of Bengal, it's the health of the water and the agriculture and everything they rely on there is directly predicated by what's going on the Gangotri and the high peaks of Uttarakhand, 1,500 miles on the other side of the subcontinent. So we all know this, but I think that's such a key element to push, that mountains are not isolated from us. They're a part of all of us, whether we live and interact with them directly or not. So it's I praise you all again for all your efforts in making mountains a part of the dialogue going forward. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Professor Butler, please.
I second what Jake has just said. Mountains to me have always been a very spiritual thing, because I grew up in the state of Oregon, which is a very mountainous state in the Pacific Northwest, and lived in British Columbia in Canada, which again is very mountainous, and now in the state of Utah. And I've seen some of the things that Jake has talked about, and I believe that we need to do everything we can to ensure that we preserve our mountains.
Thank you, dear Professor. Well, as we are bringing our event to a close, I request that Rosa Laura take the floor.
Well, I can just thank you all for coming. Ambassador, you in particular. This is the second year. Argentina is playing a very key role in the Mountain Partnership. Has been one of the first countries to really commit to mountain development, creating a national committee, which is a model for many other countries. Chile just created its national committee on the model of the Argentinian one. Argentina is the chair of the Mountain Partnership Steering Committee, so really it's a pleasure to count on your support. And also thank you to all the participants. The Mountain Partnership Secretariat really likes to work with governments and civil society. We need the support of government and civil society to reach our common objectives. And then I really would like to give my last special thanks to the government of Italy and Switzerland, who are politically, technically, and financially supporting the work of the Secretariat. Without them, we will not be able to work with you. So thank you very much for you, and I hope to see you next year when we will celebrate the next International Mountain Day. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rosa Laura, and welcome our friends at the International Day of Mountains. I don't have time to make the closing remarks, fortunately for you. So, thank you. See you at the activity that we have. Now we have a refreshing, and then at 3 p.m. You have to work, my dears. Thank you. Good luck.